Hi everyone, Steve Kama the Amazing here from the basement of a rave. They were very generous to donate the space, and I'm here to give you a magic and mentalism review. I believe this is actually my first magic review, so that's exciting. This is Dani Da Ortiz Penguin Lecture for February 2017. I do believe it's his third Penguin Lecture. For those of you who don't know, Penguin records their lectures as live to a live audience of magicians and lay people. They also will oftentimes have the performer do a live show the day before to a larger group of lay people with a little less magicians. And then they oftentimes will use live footage from the show at the beginning of the lecture or throughout the lecture to show some of the other effects. So with this one, we got to start with a full performance done the day before from Dani Da Ortiz, and he performs all the things he's going to teach in the lecture. It was a good 20 or 30 minute performance, very solid beginning, middle, end sort of thing. For one, hilarious, very, very funny personality, very funny guy, just everything he does is funny, and as well as very deceptive and quite amazing. He had us all laughing throughout the entire lecture, but especially this 30-minute performance. I was literally wiping tears out of my eyes. I saw Dan Harlan towards the end of the night wiping tears out of his eyes, and it was wonderful. Now, I do need to preface this by saying I haven't seen Danny's other two Penguin lectures. I do know from what he said that there was a little bit of crossover from the previous ones, but he tried to keep any of those very short, any of the crossover very short, and he was just using it to sort of push a point home about something else that he was doing. So some of the effects that he did, he started off with an any card at any number. This is not going to be like the most impossible way to perform it. It's not going to fry your magic buddies or anything like that, but it is going to be entertaining for an audience. He does this effect in order to push a further point of how to be more visual with your performances and how to structure your sets and structure your effects to be memorable in a very visual sense. This one definitely memorable in its jokes as well as its performance, and the visual aspect of it also makes it a bit more impossible as well. Another effect that he does is think of a suit. One person thinks of a suit, other people are grabbing chunks of cards from throughout the deck, and when the spectator names their suit, Danny's able to find exactly face down which cards were the same suit out of the chunks that the audience chose. Very legit deck, no marks on it, and as well as that, there's a bit of a kicker ending. Perhaps a little bit of setup, sure. But very cool effect, one that I plan on doing right away, and I've already got a nice way to get into it. And it was simple, it's fun, and it does have a good ending, and as well as that, he's again showing you how to make the ending even bigger. Now, the thing that he teaches from this effect is about red flags, about essentially your audience is going to remember things in sort of different visuals. So he constructs certain sentences, certain maneuvers and things that draw a red flag up. Your spectators remember it. And he's doing these on purpose so that when the audience goes back and tries to put together the effect again, they're putting together the effect he wants them to see. So he gives you some tips and advice and a great way in this effect to get your audience to remember the things that you want them to remember. One, I don't know the name of it, but essentially somebody has chosen a card, it's been returned into the deck, and Danny has members of the audience essentially taking chunks of cards away and narrowing it down to just a couple of cards and showing the whole time that they're taking the cards that none of them are the spectator's card, and it gets down to a couple, and he really plays up what seems almost like control over the audience, but then at the same time complete freedom from the audience to be able to do whatever they want. And they go back and forth on which one to choose, finally eliminating one, no equivocate, Nothing like that. It really is, are you sure that's what you want? Do you want this one? Very funny effect, very impossible, massively impossible effect. It feels like he simultaneously is controlling them and have no idea what's going on. And it's massive chaos, and it feels completely, feels so risky. And then he teaches you the method, and it's foolproof and amazing. So this is just kind of a bit of something that he touches on throughout, which is just his controlled chaos. Before going into this lecture, seeing some of his stuff online, I thought that he took a lot of risks. I thought that he was a bit like me, just kind of roll with your punches, have a bunch of directions to go and everything, and it's not. He knows exactly what he's doing throughout, and it looks so incredibly random. A few other things that he goes over in the lecture is some tips on what is now called the timing force. I believe it's the Fletcher drop force. He also does like a no-look classic force where he's looking the opposite direction and somebody's taking a card and he knows that they've got the right card. He gives really amazing tips on how to routine a show, how often to perform the same methods, how often to perform, how often to change up things, how to change the things up to keep the show interesting. It's stuff that I'm instantly putting into my act like already. I'm so glad that I've watched that stuff. I think anybody can take away from that part as well as just being entertained by the card magic. So maybe you're not into magic, but you can still find, and maybe you're more of a mentalist, the way that he apparently is improvising, the way that he gives spectators apparent choices, the way he routines his shows, his visual concept, his red flags, controlled chaos, all of this stuff still plays totally into mentalism, as well as being a very fun show to watch. So it's still almost even, I'd even go out and say that it's still worth it, even if you don't plan on performing any of the effects from the show. Few other things, he talks about performing for magicians and lay people at the same time, or just kind of in general. Now, of course, magicians, lay people, two very different things. We shouldn't ever care about performing for magicians unless we can do it without taking away from the layperson's entertainment. So that's more where Dani Da Ortiz lives, is finding little things that don't affect the layperson, but ruin the magician. So very cool stuff to look into for that, of how to perform for magicians by just tweaking some stuff and still being entertaining to everybody and fooling to the layperson. So that was a very fun, just little things that he did. Another thing, huge thing that he does is he will often tell you what the effect is going to be before he does it. So there's no, there's nothing to hide behind in his routines. He says, you are going to name a card, you are going to name a number, that card is going to be at that number, and does the effect. Pros and cons. Pros, everything I've just talked about, all of it is a pro, all of it's so great. The only cons I can really say is that a lot of what he's able to get away with is just because he is Dani Da Ortiz. Just the way he talks and moves and thinks and acts, and how aloof he seems, and his the lost in translation sort of thing he's got going. Those kind of things help him do these effects. You're not going to be able to do that, but that doesn't mean you can't do the effects. So it's just that some of the things that he teaches you is going to it's going to take some time for you to tweak it, for you to be able to do it, because you can't go, oh, is it pick, take? I don't know. It's your life. You do what you want. Like, you're not going to be able to say those things and get away with the method. It's not going to work. But with a little bit of thought, a little bit of adding your own personality into it, or maybe not doing all the effects he did, there's still plenty to take away from. Another con is, I think some of the some of the stuff seems like maybe it wouldn't work, but then again, it was still friggin' entertaining, so hard to say. That's about it for me. Again, as always, if you have any questions, leave a comment. Go on Facebook, facebook.com/Steve the Amazing. Send me a message if you want to get in anything a bit more detailed. Of course, subscribe to the YouTube page. Let me know what else you want to review. And that's about it. Thank you all again. I will see you soon with a review of Peter Turner's monthly series number 12. And see you then.